Welcome to my chillin' tale. Tonight, I'll share with you a disturbing experience that challenges the boundaries of reality and the supernatural. This story is about an antique clock I brought into my home, a seemingly harmless object that soon revealed its sinister nature. As the clock's hands began to move backward, a series of terrifying events unfolded. Brace yourself for a journey into fear and mystery. I have always had a fascination with antiques, intrigued by their history and the stories they hold. One day, while browsing through a local antique shop, I came across a particularly old and ornate clock. Its intricate design and the eerie tick-tock of its mechanism immediately captivated me. I decided to purchase it, thinking it would be a unique addition to my home. Upon bringing the clock home, I placed it in the living room, hoping it would become a charming centerpiece. For the first few days, it seemed like any other antique elegant but unremarkable. However, things began to change in unsettling ways. It started with the clock behaving oddly. The hands would occasionally move backward and then forward erratically, as if struggling to keep time. I attributed it to a malfunction and planned to have it repaired. But then, something more disturbing occurred. One night, I was awakened by a strange noise from the living room. Investigating, I found that the clock's hands had moved to midnight, though the actual time was far from it. As I approached the clock, I noticed its ticking had become erratic, like a heartbeat racing out of control. I reset the time, but the feeling of unease remained. The following day, I began noticing strange coincidences. The clock seemed to count down to specific events, each one occurring with disturbing precision. Initially, these events were minor objects falling or breaking, but soon, they grew more alarming. One evening, during dinner, the clock's hands moved backward to a specific time. Almost immediately, I received a phone call informing me of a serious car accident involving a close friend. The timing was too precise to ignore. I realized with growing dread that the clock might be predicting significant, potentially dangerous events. I attempted to hide the clock, but it seemed to have a will of its own, always returning to its original spot. Each time the hands moved backward, something unsettling would happen. It felt as if the clock was a conduit for a malevolent force, influencing events around me. Desperate for answers, I researched the clock's history. I discovered it once belonged to a man rumored to be involved in dark rituals. The clock had a notorious reputation among antique collectors for its connection to supernatural occurrences. Records revealed similar stories of misfortune and tragedy linked to the clock. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that the clock was more than just a timepiece. It was a relic of something darker. The events it foretold became increasingly violent and distressing, trapping me in a cycle of terror. I consulted with experts in the supernatural, but their explanations offered little comfort. The clock seemed to operate on its own sinister agenda. Defying all rational understanding, I realized I had to confront the reality that the clock was a malevolent entity that could not be controlled or contained. Eventually, I decided I had to destroy the clock. The constant fear and the realization that it was orchestrating dangerous events left me with no other choice. I dismantled the clock, hoping to break the curse it carried. Even as I destroyed it, I felt its dark influence lingering. The clock was gone, but the memory of those terrifying moments remained with me, a constant reminder of how something seemingly innocent could become a vessel of pure dread. Despite the clock's destruction, the silence that followed was unsettling. The oppressive presence seemed to linger, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been awakened. Days turned into weeks, and while the incident ceased, I began experiencing disturbing dreams. I found myself back in the living room, the clock reassembled and ticking ominously, each dream filled with visions of horrific events unfolding in real time. I reached out to a local historian and occult expert for closure. They confirmed my fears. The clock had been a vessel for dark forces, and its destruction might not have eradicated its influence entirely. Some curses and malevolent energies could persist even after their physical forms were gone. Despite my attempts to move on, the clock's malevolence seemed to linger. I became paranoid, constantly feeling watched and waiting for something to strike. The sense of being observed was relentless, and maintaining normalcy became a struggle. One stormy night, while alone at home, I heard a distinct ticking sound from the attic. The sound was unmistakably like the clock's rhythmic beat. Heart pounding, I went to the attic, where I had stored the clock's broken pieces. To my horror, the fragments had reassembled into a crude version of the original clock. The hands were moving backward, and the eerie ticking filled the space with a chilling resonance. Realizing the urgency of the situation, I contacted the expert once more. Together, we performed a ritual to neutralize the residual energy of the clock. The ritual was intense, involving complex rites and protective symbols. After the ritual, I felt a significant shift in the atmosphere. The oppressive presence seemed to lift, and I hoped I had finally put an end to the clock's sinister influence. Life gradually returned to normal. The dreams faded, and the pervasive dread diminished. I remained cautious, knowing that the darkness associated with the clock had left a mark on my soul. The experience had fundamentally changed me, and I could no longer view ordinary objects with the same trust and innocence. The clock was gone, but its story served as a haunting reminder of how even the most innocuous items can harbor unfathomable darkness. As I reflect on those terrifying months, I am left with a deep awareness of the thin veil separating our world from the unknown and a wary respect for the shadows that linger just beyond the edges of reality.